Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a Doctor Who episode commentary in which that guy who turns up on far too many of the DVDs and sounds a bit like this tries to wax lyrical and positively about a Doctor Who episode chosen by a friend.
Midway sending now, Godborough receiving now.
Yes, hello everybody. Toby, hi. I am Jaye Butler Moore, and I'm a local government minion in my working life, and a songwriter, and I'm on YouTube and SoundCloud and stuff, and I'm in a band called Dirge. But I'm here to talk about my 7 favourite things about the Seeds of Death.
Welcome to Toby Hadoke's Time Travels. Podcast clearance awaited. Hello. I don't know why I did that. I'm not going to say much at the beginning. I'm just going to get straight on with it. I'm going to turn up the volume on my DVD, which is on episode select, because, well, you'll hear why, because it's got this trailer for the Seeds of Death on some sort of a loop. So that would have made for an unclean opening, and there's one thing I don't like. It's my opening being unclean. So let us begin. So I'm on episode selection, so I'm going to press select. You may want to press play, however you want to do it. Some of you, I know, just listen without the pictures. You crazy mavericks. Well, we're going to go in 3, 2, 1. There we go. It's the beginning of The Seeds of Death, episode 5. We're sort of going live. If you're a patron, certainly. If you've listened to episode 4, which was released as I record this 3 or 4 days ago, what that means is that I released episode 4 without having watched episodes 5 and 6. So we're pretty much live. If you're a non-patron, it doesn't matter. You get them several months later. Oh, how do I get them earlier, Toby? Go to my Patreon page. I used to do this all the time. Bing bong 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 ba-dong, bong 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 ba-dong ba-dong. Only a Doctor Who fan could know the plinky plonky incidental music of Doctor Who. So yes, I'm going live as as the Ice Wearer takes quite a while to kill Zoe, but she is silhouetted brilliantly against that inexplicable wall of lights. But this sort of worked much better in the compilation, because the Ice Wearer didn't seem to take quite so long, because it obviously had to wait for the credits to roll last week on the nice and the temperature to go up on the handily large temperature thing there. But they do look good, the Ice Warriors. I know that they had to be very careful about when they fell over, because you could because of the nature of the neck. If you sort of fell forward onto your chest, and your neck carried on going because of the momentum, you could chop your head off. So I think there's one in Monster Peloton where it's lying on the ground, where it actually doesn't have the front piece on. You can see both pieces on that one, and then they're not quite joined together. So yeah, he's got it. Yeah. Oh yes. So of course. The Ice Warrior was moved by the fact that it wasn't Patrick Troughton last week, but now it is Patrick Troughton. He's gone, I better go back and look again. Quite what the prone body smack in front of him didn't arouse his suspicion last week. I've no idea. Perhaps he just can't see Tommy Laird's. So Patrick Troughton is back this week. But yes, as I say, as I record this, I'm rather panicky. It's actually I'm got to try and get 2 episodes in tonight, and it is literally 50 minutes before 10 o'clock, because you know what it's like. Because I am essentially doing this as live, in order to get this out on time. So as we know, the lights go out at 10 o'clock. So let's hope that nothing goes wrong. So Zoe is back, and we have where's Phipps, says Zoe, says Jamie. At least he has a sort of look towards where they've gone. But she makes much more of a fuss about the fact that Fusham has nearly saved her life, as well she might, because actually, much as I'm annoyed at the lack of credit Phipps gets, I'm also annoyed with myself for not choosing Fusham before this episode, because this, of course, is his last episode. Pat Gorman at the back there. So I foolishly I didn't choose Fusham, who would have been one of my 7 things, but Jay got in there before me. This is Sir James Gregson, played by Hugh Morton. He's also in the film of Quatermass in the Pit as a snooty journalist, but he's also dressed in a terrible outfit. You can imagine him, can't you? Am I really wearing this? Could we have a word with my agent? I normally wear baggy slacks and maybe a polo neck jumper and a tweed jacket. He's quite a good character as sort of testy officials go. And I remember in that Doctor Who magazine I read before I got this, that gave everything away about it. It described him as the late Hugh Morton, because at that point, I think all of the other... Oh no, Philip Ray was dead, I think, but the majority of the cast were still alive, which is the opposite now, where actually almost all of the cast are no longer with us. But Hugh Morton's brother, another brilliant silhouette of the Ice Warrior. I love that. Hugh Morton's brother was Clive Morton, who plays Trenchard in The Sea Devils. So they are a rare pair of siblings to have appeared in Doctor Who. Off the top of my head, there are the guards, Dominic and Christopher, and I'm sure some more will pop into my head. Now, this foam machine... Now, it's actually, I like the foam against all the sort of flora and fauna, the trees and stuff. But the foam isn't terribly scary, although I actually like the stuff that's on film. Everything just looks better on film. That Ice Warrior costume looks better on film. It's glistening, isn't it? It's like a shiny carapace. Look at that. I think they are a great design. Hats off to Martin Ball. Very cumbersome to wear, but they're a good design. But I was going to say the foam isn't scary. Actually, the foam going in front of the camera there is quite oppressive. I think the point I was hang on, I will talk about the foam in a bit. That is Peter Whittaker, who plays Inspector Gascoigne in the Faceless Ones. And he gets a credit in that. I don't know why, because he doesn't say anything, but he gets a couple of special actions. But he pretty much does exactly the same in this episode, which is he comes on, sees somebody that's got it in for him, and gets shot. Because that's precisely what happens to his character in the Faceless Ones, where he gets a credit, but he doesn't here. He was obviously a past master, didn't need to rehearse much. They just went, Peter, do your thing. Walk on and get killed. That's essentially it. So there we go. Well done, Peter Whittaker. You've had your moment in the sun. Well, appropriate for the weather control. I like the fact that the weather control unit, there's no subtlety, is there? It's either dry or it's not. They haven't got a sort of little switch for muggy with a chance of rain later, or April showers, or absolute downpour, hail. No, dry or not. So Patrick Troughton is back from his holiday, and has he had a shave? Yeah, maybe. Has he shaved his sideboards off? I know it's stated, I think, in the discontinuity guide that his sideboards change lengths, but not particularly noticeable to me. Not as noticeable as Miss Kelly's costume, Dolly Bird slug outfit, whatever. Finless Sex Stegosaurus, whatever else she is, her Barbie log. She does. It's ridged like bark, isn't it? She is very swish, though. She's very beautiful, and she's cool as a cucumber. It's funny with the Seeds of Death because it will never be a favourite of mine for no fault of its own. Because is it any better? Is it any worse than the Ice Warriors? But the Ice Warriors, you see, was unavailable. Tomb of the Cybermen was unavailable. I actually think Tomb is rather overrated, but that's a conversation for another day. And I did before it came back because I'd got a few of the soundtracks. I mean, it was like listening to them underwater while somebody poured socks into your ears. Oh, poor Fusham. Oh, I'll choose Terry Scully for this episode. I can't, because Jay already has. Poor old Fusham. But he gets... and I think Alan Benion's crutch has split. Yes, it has. Well, unless Lars a lady. No, that's an awful thing to say. But anyway, I can't believe I said that. We just suddenly got X-rated on this usually very clean affair. I do think the Ice Lord costume is very good. That might have to be one of my things. Oh, and that's the other thing they did with the Ice Warriors when they brought them back, didn't they? They got rid of the brilliant hands. So let's bring back a classic Doctor Who monster. What's good about these monsters? Well, they've got a brilliant design. They've got these sort of claw-like hands, and they've got this really distinctive voice. They hiss. Right. Let's do neither of those things. And is that inner flesh part of the outer flesh? Are they a cyborg? I don't know. It's a bit mystery what they look like underneath. The mystery is quite beguiling, isn't it? Yeah. Let's lose the mystery as well. I mean, I actually liked the episode, Cold War, but it seemed to me it did the three things you don't do when you bring it back an old monster. But that's just me being a stick in the mud. That's great. The silhouette, the double silhouette of Fusham, who I think looks rather like David Jason in this episode, more so than in the other episodes, and Slar there, and that's brilliant. Now you see, if this episode had come back. And I'd listened to the soundtrack millions and millions of times and then saw that this scene was filmed like that, I'd be like, oh my God, you see so much when you're missing the pictures. But because we've always had it, I will always sort of treat the Seeds of Death as, maybe sideboards are longer, I don't know. I will always treat the Seeds of Death as sort of, and the men's costumes really don't help. They do look like Velcroed fuzzy felt. With as I say, visible panty lines. I mean, visible panty tape. Most people try and hide their pant lines. In the future, is that what they decide to do? They reclaim the panty line in the future. They go, well, people can see our pants underneath. Well, they shouldn't be looking there. I shall reclaim the pant line. I shall draw attention to the pant line, and in the process lose my dignity. Space milkshake. They're drinking behind a piece of scenery. Jamie and Zoe. And Miss Kelly's got a pencil and a clipboard, which is another sort of thing that my family would have guffawed at, the idea that you could do TMAT and would still need a padded paper. But there we go. I like the space milkshake. So what was I saying? Yeah, so the problem with the Seeds of Death is that it's always around. Now, I'm liking this stuff on film, which looks much better on the DVD than it did on the video. Trout sort of horsing around. I think slightly naughtily in this story sometimes. We'll get to that when we get to the episode ending. But yes, anything about the Seeds of Death, if it had gone missing and come back, now I may only be speaking for myself, and because it was the first video, so I've watched it so many times because I didn't have anything else to watch. Well, not much. I had for a while I had this and Revenge of the Cybermen and Pyramids of Mars and everything post Time in the Rani. I think that was so because it didn't get itself lost, it was very, very, very familiar. So I didn't have to imagine anything about it to then have those imaginings either confirmed or exceeded. And I wonder if it would have been deemed a lost classic. Nobody seemed to bang on that much about it because the Mind Robber was there, and that was obviously the strange, different story. The War Games, which is the 10-part epic to see out the era. The Dominators, which has been chosen for me for this podcast by a Doctor Who writer. Actually, we'll get to that at some point. I love this sequence. This is pure Troughton. I think he when he does funny panic, he's brilliant, and the hanky on the face is just delightful. And the sort of sheer desperation. And of course, it's the gag that it's the last thing he chucks on it, and he hasn't said what it is. And the look on his face is absolutely priceless. Oh, he's such a marvellous actor. And there is just a little hint of a dark smile just at the end of that, after the kind of, well, would you believe what it is that I chucked on it? So much going on without doing too much with his face. Absolutely terrific. I've actually had, of course, I've had some correspondence, which I might include in the final part. I know that Joe Llewellyn, who's a great supporter and a great correspondent, says he loves this TARDIS trio, and I can't say I blame him. It's great that Zoe is clever and can sort of patronise Jamie, and Jamie is brave but stupid, but not so stupid that he's sent up or patronised. I mean, Zoe does patronise him, but it's all good fun. Bye. I just love the way he waves. Yeah, ask the computer. That's right. I've actually got a picture of John Whitty, the computer voice. I did a thing on Twitter where I put up pictures of actors who played monsters or computers whose faces we didn't see, because I thought people would be interested. I have no idea if anything I'm doing is interesting. So I think even Alan Bennion is done in post sync. But it's the signal. Yes. Are they going to speak to the Grand Marshal? He does have a look of David Jason about him. I do think Star looks better from the front. I'm not slightly sure about his otter tail back to his helmet. I think they have a cloak in Peladon, don't they? I think the cloak as well, because I think the cloak really helps with the costume. That's what I was going to say about the foam, because Fury from the Deep is, this terribly scary story with this ominous heartbeat. But the foam in this is quite comical. Although, is it? Actually, when I watched this first, I wasn't that bothered by the foam. It was just like foam. But actually, in this sort of cleaned up, much better version, I think the foam is actually quite ominous and quite creepy. So my point may not stand. Well, it's just that the foam didn't seem particularly scary in this, and so it made me worry that actually, when Fury, this the really scary one, if it ever came back, which seems increasingly unlikely, because that's also got plinkety plonkety piano music in it too. And similar sort of costumes. Everyone's got those sort of slacks on as well. The technicians in Fury wear similar sorts of outfits. So, and because I don't think this is a scary story. The thing that Fury, is famous for is being one of the most terrifying 2.5 hours in Doctor Who history. And you go, well, with those things, would it be? Although obviously that scene that turned up of Mr. Oak and Mr. Quill suggested that director Hugh David really is going for the spooks. But who knows now? And who knows if we'll ever see it. I do hope so. I'd love to see. For many, many years, it was my favourite story. Of course it was, because I'd never seen it. That's how my stupid mind works. Graham Lehman is the Grand Marshal. What else does Graham Lehman play, everybody? He plays the Controller in the Macra Terror. He plays a Time Lord in Colony in Space. He also plays the Time Lord, although he looks very different because he's got a beard, which he hasn't got in Colony in Space, in The Three Doctors. And he's Price, the technician at the computer banks in the aforementioned Fury from the Deep. What do these parts all have in common? They all are seated. And I had a theory, which I think is correct, is that they all remain seated, and I had a theory because he's in an episode of Doomwatch where he is on crutches, so I came up with a theory that he was a disabled actor. And I put this to the director of the Macra Terror, John Davis, and he said, "Oh no, I don't think so." I was like, "Oh damn, that was such a good theory." And then I put it to Margot Hayhoe, who's the production assistant on various stories, and she said she thought that he was. And then, bizarrely, his son, who's a musician, was doing something at the Theatre Royal in Bath when I was doing Moths Ate My Doctor Who scarf. And he was saying that his dad carried on acting even in amateur stuff when he couldn't carry on acting as a professional, and he played a dead body in a thing when his mobility was good. And he had MS. So although he wasn't as my partner, who's a wheelchair user, is often keen to point out, there is a gulf between being confined to a wheelchair and being able to do a dance. And that some wheelchair users can stand and move about. I don't think he was confined to. He was totally immobile, that he couldn't stand up or anything. But I think he had limited movement. And actually, without too much song and dance and fanfare, the BBC gave him a lot of work over the years, with directors giving him parts where his restricted mobility was not an issue. So I think that, and so of course the fact that his character is in a moving wheelchair in the animation of Fury from the Deep, some people went, "Oh, it's political correctness gone mad" or whatever, actually reflected the reality. He's dead like David Jason there, and now he's dead. But he was exactly like David Jason there, Fewsham, and I think Fewsham comes good. What a brilliant character he was, and he finally does something brave in order to help out the heroes. Well done, Fewsham. So his death not in vain. And look, Troughton's very good at reacting to the death and the tragedy of it. So that's a great final moment for that character, who you would kind of expected to at least see it through to the end as well, because it's only episode 5, so one of your main guest characters doesn't make it to make it rain. Yes. Yes, with Jamie and Zoe. Oh, that's very good. Oh dear, so Zoe and Jamie are in trouble. That the warrior was seen. There we go. Do. So yes, that's Troughton running on the spot there, even though we're on film and should have a bit more space. But doesn't the film look gorgeous? Would Doctor Who have looked better if it was all made on film? Probably. But that's a pipe dream. And it's all telly in it. All telly in those days was a mixture of the two, but they certainly get more done. I think the foam here looks absolutely magnificent. I don't know why coming into this I was worried it wasn't it wasn't scary. I mean, Troughton does horse about in it a bit, and I know for this cliffhanger he put his hand over his head in a funny way in order to make it less scary for the kids. I have to say, I think Troughton's brilliant, but I'm not sure how good an idea that is. But this is quite funny, but deliberately so. But that's great. But the foam is really scary. The foam, but for the audience who've had the web in the Web of Fear, which was partially foam, it's had the foam from Fury from the Deep, and now foam again. Do you think they were going? Are we having more foam in Doctor Who? Now I think this is one of those rare Perils of Pauline moments, isn't it, where we get a load of extra material before we get back to the cliffhanger next week. So we've left Jamie and Zoe with the sort of Ice Warrior, and I've got a feeling that there's some additional business. Oh dear, is this? Yes. So that's a slightly silly move from Patrick Troughton, and I think we get some extra business next week. However, that was rather fun. So I've got to decide on my favourite thing. Now, I would maybe say Fewsham's death, because then I can sort of, which is probably gonna, it's not gonna help me any, because I suspect Jay, having played the Fewsham card, is not going to mention Fewsham again. But I feel very strongly that I should have chosen Fewsham as a character, which and as a performance, which I now cannot do because Jay beat me to it. Them's the rules. I'm just going to silence the trailer. But if I choose Fewsham's death scene, that moment where the cowardly guy comes good, and does something brave at the cost of his life, which gives us a high point of drama, but a nice conclusion to an important character, brilliantly played by the late Terry Scully, who I think had a tricky life, and that was reflected in his performances, which were often people, just a little bit on the edge. So we benefited from that. Bless him. So I am choosing, Fewsham's demise. So what has Jay chosen for good thing number 5?
So number 5, I'm going for the Ice Lords. The design of them, of the sort of mask there. I mean, I guess there's a bit of a debate about, once you get things like the Ice Lords and Davros with the Daleks, that the Ice Warriors or the Daleks become kind of henchmen. I don't mind that. I do really love the Ice Lords. The performance of the guy who plays Slar. And of course, in this episode, you can't forget the amazing sparkly disco Ice Lord, who's Slar's boss. When you get to be at a certain point in the Ice Warrior hierarchy, obviously you get the glittery helmet with all that sparkles on it. Brilliant.
Yeah. And in fact, there's something about the Ice Lords that I was sort of saving for next week, which I will. I'll save it all for next week. I knew I was falling on my sword there. The Ice Lords are great. Alan Bennion plays them all, apart from the Grand Marshal, because he's in The Curse and the Monster of Peladon. He is the definitive Ice Lord. Excellent actor. Sadly, never got to meet him. Okay, so that is the end of the Seeds of Death. I don't want you to be too scared of this episode ending, so I'm putting my hand over my head in a needlessly comical fashion. And I will see you next time. Thanks very much. Oh, I turned into the commander from the Ark there, who is almost as sibilant as the. Well, we will be put onto microcell slides. He's one of the impressions I could do. We are in the 57th segment of time. That's my impression of the commander from the Ark, which has got nothing to do with this story at all. But Just in case you weren't sure how much of a stream of consciousness these blooming things are. See you next time. Ta-ta. Thanks so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, in which Jaye Butler Moore told me, Toby Hadoke, the best things about the seeds of death. The patrons of this podcast, to whom I am indebted, include Chris Davis, Edward Salt, Paul Ingerson, Robert Jewell, Christopher Joyce, Judith Jackson, William Keith, Matthew Kilburn, Andy Kitching, Hendrik Korzeniowski, Andrew Lester, Andrew Llewellyn, Jacob Lumley, Nate Lynch, Darrell McLean, Pip Madeley, Nick Mellish, James Miller, Justin E. Monaghan, Jeremiah O'Connor, Mark Trevor Owen, Russell Parker, Phil Pascoe, Richard Patey, Ken Patterson, Thomas Payne, John Pettigrew, Liam Price, Corridors, Rachel T.S. and Peter Reed. The music for this podcast is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. And if you'd like your name to join the lovely list I just read out there, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke and become a patron of this podcast series from as little as £3 per month. You even get a 10% discount on that if you sign up for a whole year. There are bonus goodies and advance releases and some extra material. However, I know that that's some kind of a commitment that not everybody can afford or is inclined to do, and that's absolutely fair enough. However, if you want to do a one-off donation to keep me in coffee and vim, you can go to kofi.com/Toby Hadoke and pop some pennies into my purse there. However, I know that times are tough, and I know that we consume things for free these days, and again, I'm absolutely fine with that. However, do you know what costs you nothing? Going to iTunes and giving me 5 stars and perhaps some nice words of encouragement so that passing algorithm tweakers can get an idea of the quality, if you deem it so to be, of this stuff, and it may lure more users to my little podcasting boudoir. Thanks. If you're hanging around Manchester at a loose end, I do live comedy with special guests, the cream of the live stand-up comedy circuit, at Excess Malarkey at 8 p.m. every Tuesday at the Bread Shed in Manchester. We also do an online version of the show, twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey, on the first Sunday of every month. That is free, although we do encourage donations. And you can follow me on Twitter at Toby Hadoke. I've made a rod for my own back by doing post-credits things now that about 2 people have noticed. So you two, it's your blooming fault. Don't I do enough? So that's the post-credits bit, just for you. Yeah.